This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman as we continue with our Democracy Now! Special on our journey of Yip Harburg's life with his son, Ernie Harburg. Ernie talks about how Yip Harburg wrote the lyrics to The Wizard of Oz.
Actually, Yip did more than the lyrics. When Yip and Harold Arlen were called in to do the score of The Wizard of Oz, it was Yip who had this executive experience in his electrical appliance business and also had become a show doctor. So he was, that is, when a show wasn't working, you would call somebody in and try to fix it up. He had an overview of shows, and he had an executive talent. And so he was always what they called a muscle man in a show, all right? And he'd already worked with Bert Lahr in a great song, the Woodchopper's song. And
wait a second, Bert Lahr, the Lion?
The Lion. Bert Lahr, and most of these people were from vaudeville and burlesque. And Yip knew them in the 20s, but he actually worked with Bert Lahr in this Life, Walk a Little Faster, and another review. I forget that name, but he and Yip and Arlen gave Bert songs to sing, which allowed him to satirize the opera world, if you want, or a send-off of Rich, you know. And so they had that relationship. Also, Yip knew Jack Haley, the Tin Woodman. And Yip also worked with Bobby Conley as a choreographer in the early 30s on his shows, who was also the choreographer for The Wizard of Oz. So he had a cast here with Arlen who were, you know, sort of Yip's men, you know what I mean? So when Yip went to Arthur Freed, the producer, who was too busy to work on this musical, and Mervyn LeRoy had nothing to do with it practically, because he had never done a musical before, so it became a vacuum in which the lyricist entered, because he was already to do so. Yip was always an active, you know, organizer. And so the first thing he suggested was that they integrate the music with the story, which at that time in Hollywood they usually didn't do. They'd stop the story and you'd sing a song, they'd stop the story and sing a song. That you integrate this. Arthur Freed accepted the idea immediately. Yip and Harold then wrote the songs for the 45 minutes within a 110-minute film of the Munchkin sequence and into the Emerald City and on their way to the Wicked Witch, when all the songs stopped because they wouldn't let them do anymore, okay? You'll notice then the chase begins, you see. In the movie.
Why wouldn't they let him do anymore?
Because they didn't understand what he was doing, and they wanted a chase in there. So anyhow, Yip also wrote all the dialogue in that time and the setup to the songs, and he also wrote the part where they give out the heart, the brains, and the nerve, because he was the final script editor. And there was 11 screenwriters on that, and he pulled the whole thing together, wrote his own lines, and gave the thing a coherence and a unity, which made it a work of art. But he doesn't get credit for that. He gets lyrics by Yip Harburg, you see. But nevertheless, he put his influence on the thing. And
who wrote The Wizard of Oz originally, the story?
Yeah, Frank L. Baum was an interesting kind of maverick guy who at one point in his life was an editor of a paper in South Dakota, and this is at the time of the populist revolutions or revolts or whatever you want to call it in the Midwest, because the railroads and the Eastern City banks absolutely dominated the life of the farmers, and they couldn't get away from the debts that were accumulated from these. And Baum set out consciously to create an American fable so that the American kids didn't have to read those German grim fairy stories where they chopped off hands and things like that. You know, he didn't like that. He wanted an American fable. But it had this underlay of political symbolism to it, that the farmer, the scarecrow, was the farmer. He thought he was dumb, but he really wasn't. He had a brain. And the Tin Woodman was the laborer in the factories who, with one accident after another, he was totally reduced to a tin man with no heart, all right, on the assembly line. And the Cowardly Lion was William Jennings Bryan, who kept trying, was a big politician at that time, promising to make the world over with the gold standard, you know. And the wizard, or the humbug type, was the Wall Street finances, and the wicked witch was probably the railroads, but I'm not sure, all right? So it was a beautiful matchup here with Frank Baum and Yip Harburg, okay? Because in the book, the word rainbow was never once mentioned. And you can go back and look at it. I did 3 times. The word rainbow is never once mentioned in the book. And the book opens up with Dorothy on a black and white world that Kansas had no color. Just read the first paragraph in it. So when they got to the part where they had to get the song for the little girl, they hadn't written it yet. They had written everything else. They hadn't written the song for Judy Garland, who was a discovery by one of Yip's collaborators, Burt Lane, and nobody knew the wonder in her voice at that time. So they worked on this song, and at that time, Ira, Yip, Larry Hart, and the others thought that the composers should create the music first. Now, they were both locked into, the lyricist and the composer were locked into the storyline and the character and the plot development. So they both knew that at this point there was a little girl in trouble on the Kansas City environment, all right, and that she yearned to get out of trouble, all right? So Yip gave Harold what they call a dummy title. It's not the final title, but it's something that more or less zeroes in on what the situation is all about and what this little girl is going to take a journey, all right? So Yip gave him a title, I Want to Get on the Other Side of the Rainbow.
Now here's what happens, and I want you to play this symphonically. Okay, I said, my God, Harold, this is a 12-year-old girl wanting to be somewhere over the rainbow. It isn't Nelson Eddy. And I got frightened. And I said, let's save it for something else, but let's not have it then. Well, he felt he was crestfallen, as he should be. And I said, let's try again. Well, he tried for another week, tried all kinds of things, but he kept coming back to it, as he should have. And he came back. And I was worried about it, and I called Ira Gershwin over, my friend. Ira said to him, he said, can you play it a little more in a pop style? Now I play it. With rhythm. Okay. I said, oh, well, that's great. That's fine. I said, now we have to get a title for it. I didn't know what the title was going to be. And when he had, I finally came to the thing, the way I logicalized it. I want to be somewhere on the other side of the rainbow. And I began trying to fit on the other side of the rainbow. When he had a front phrase like, da, 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 da. Now, if you sang E, you couldn't sing E, E, E. You had to sing O. That's the only thing that would get out. I had to get something with O in it, see? Over the rainbow. Now, that sings beautifully, see? So this sound forced me into the word over, which was much better than on the other side.
Yip, Arlen worked on it. He came up with this incredible music, which, if anybody wants to try it, Just play the chords alone, not the melody. And you will hear Paco Bell, and you will hear religious hymns, and you will hear fairy tales and lullabies just in the chords. No one ever listens to that, but try it if you play the piano. At any rate, on top of these chords, then Harold started the thing off with an octave jump. Somewhere, okay? And Yip had no idea what to do with that octave jump. Incidentally, Harold did this in Paper Moon, too. If you remember, let's see, how does that start?
It's only a paper moon sailing over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me.
And Harold was a great composer. So Yip wrestled with it for about 3 weeks. And finally he came up with the word. You see, this is what a lyricist does, the word, to hit the storyline, the character, the music. It's an incredible thing. Somewhere, all right? And then when you put it in an octave, you get somewhere, okay? And you jump up, and you're ready for take that journey, all right? Where? Over the rainbow, okay? And then you're off. It's not a love song. It's a story of a little girl that wants to get out. She's in trouble, and she wants to get somewhere. Well, the rainbow was the only color that she'd see in Kansas. She wants to get over the rainbow. But then Yip put in something which makes it a Yip song. He said, and the dreams you dare to dream really do come true, you see. And that word dare lands on the note, and it's a perfect thing, and it's been generating courage for people for years afterwards, you know. That's the way that the whole score came.
Was it a hit right away?
No, it wasn't. This was supposed to be an answer, MGM's answer to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And of about 10 major critics at that time when Wizard of Oz came out, I would say only 2 liked the show. The other 8 said it was corny, that it was heavy, that Judy Garland was no good, and so forth. So, oh, yeah, you could read again in the book Who Put the Rainbow in the Wizard of Oz by Harold Meyerson and Ernie Harburg. And but it persisted, you know. And then in 1956, when television first started saturating the nation...
More than 20 years later.
More than 20 years later. I don't think they even had their money back from the show, see. MGM sold the film rights to CBS, who then put it on. And it hit the top of it broke out every single record there was, and it's been playing every year since then. And of course, it went around the world, and it's become a major art work, which is, I must say, an American artwork, because the story, the plot with the 3 characters, the brain, the heart, the courage, and finding a home, is a universal story for everybody. And that's an American kind of story, all right? And Yip and Harold put these things into song.
Who did the Munchkins represent?
We represent the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, and in the name of the Lollipop Guild,
Oh, you mean political thing? I think they represented the little people, the people. And that's the way they were, it came on in the book. You see, the book, if you're a purist, you wouldn't like the film. It's just like anything else. There are societies of people who meet and discuss the books. Okay, there's even a society for the Winkies, which are the guards around the Wicked Witch's, it's castle. There really is. They meet once a year, and they're serious. And they don't like the picture because it didn't follow the book. See, because Yip and the writers changed it, as Hollywood will.
Was the book a little bit more favorable to the Winkies?
No. Well, yes. The Winkies were good people, and they were played up there. If you go back and read the book, you will see that they were a lovely, decent kind of people. Yes. That was one thing. I guess it wasn't PC there, But nevertheless, when you read a good novel, and you see the film, there's hardly any relationship between the two. All these lines from a film have entered the American language in a way that people don't even know where they came from. Toto, looks like we're not in Kansas anymore. Or, come out, wherever you are, which in the 70s started taking on, when the gay movement started, this line started meaning different things, you see.
Come out, wherever you are, and meet the young lady who fell from a star.
So the songs keep growing with the times. People interpret them,
How did Yip feel in late 1950s when it was a hit, when people started hearing it all over the world?
Well, I think they were quite surprised, along with the film moguls, and the fact that years later, he and Harold both said that they did not know what depth and strength that song Over the Rainbow had. And also one other one, the song Ding Dong the Witch is Dead is a universal liberation of freedom, a cry for freedom, which isn't seen like that, but one time when some tyrannical owner of an airlines company stepped down, all the employees started singing Ding Dong the Witch is Dead. So people use these words, and during the war, World War II, We're Off to See the Wizard was sung by troops marching, So, but nobody knows that Yip wrote the words. Now, Harold wrote the music, and the songs were Yip and Harold. That's right.
Because of the wonderful things he does, we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. If you'd like a copy of today's show, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. Back in a minute.